We're joined now by Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Amadi, thank you for joining us on this night. Another pending labor action. Let's start from the very beginning. The day man, because when you look at the productivity, how much exactly are we losing in an individual's contribution? Let's start before we look at the macroeconomic implications. The man day of a Nigerian worker, how much is that costing us when there's a labor action like this?
We can't know because we don't have exact data on what each person contributes. And by the way, it's individual contributions, vary when they work together, when they work alone. So a lot of certainty. But the key point to know is that you're going to lose. So you're losing at many fronts. First, you're looking in terms of public revenue. The essence of employment in public sector or private sector is to create wealth. So if people are not working, then they're not producing, and therefore you have a problem. GDP will constrain if it's sustained. What happens is that sometimes some of these losses can be compensated by other factors, but if they are sustained, they're very bad. Now, who are going to go on strike? Think about aviation workers who are faithful followers of NLC, electricity workers who are faithful followers of NLC, petroleum workers, NUPENG, the lower level petroleum workers who are critical in the value chain of, especially the supply chain of fuel, energy. So there is going to be acute energy shortage, not necessarily now from pricing, but from supply. So if you put all that together, that tells you that there will be significant constraint to both private and public sector production. Now, the socio-economic crisis that it creates, whenever labor goes on strike, it further damages labor relations between government and labor. So maybe government will be forced to resort to some, dark art, maybe try to arrest some persons, go to court. That further damages it. And then if people are out of job, anyway, we're not talking about ASU, who is also a faithful member of NLC. So if ASU drags into the matter, which may likely do.
Even the banks. The banks joined in the two-day warning
exactly.
strike.
So they impact even on private sector transactions. Even if you're a farmer, you're a business person who opens your shop, you need the banks, you have suppliers within the banks, you have customers within the bank. So the damage is huge. And then the real point here is that this economy that should be almost in full employment should be almost in full production to recover ground. So if it's happening to an economy that actually has redundancy, and then it can suffer some losses, but we don't need to suffer any significant shutdown in terms of labor, in terms of employment and work, and that's damaging in multiple perspectives.
So apparently, based on Bengashiru's report there, since the 40s, Nigeria organized labor have been fighting over the same thing. Minimum wage, high inflation, stagnant growth, price increase. And how many years after, we're still
fighting?
We're still fighting for the same
but not really.
basic fundamental things. I'd like you to react to that.
Sure.
Then, it looks, from all indication, that the organized labor is a divided house. The NLC, the TUC don't seem to be on the same page as far as this, strike is concerned. How is that going to impact on the fight for a better deal for the Nigerian worker?
Very good point. Let's start with the last point. You see, the TUC president says there's no organized labor. That's not correct, but the point he wants to make is that TUC is a parallel, not contracting union to NLC. Let's not forget that TUC was formed at the time of President Obasanjo, when NLC probably threw the government off its balance, and they resorted to just like I have asked today. So they created a parallel. So okay, this is for senior guys, whose this position will be less radical than lower workers. Now let's look at this palliative crisis, this issue of subsidy. The Nigerian economy is structured in a way that the big guys take more. If you look at the wage disparity, it has a Gini coefficient, that means inequality of over 40%, which means that if you look at the bottom up and bottom down, the top and down, a gulf.
Yes.
So people who are in TUC are less impacted by this crisis because they can outsource. They can outsource their suffering, just like manufacturers can sell it back to consumers.
Right.
They transfer the they've lost. So if you increase electricity cost today, the person who manufactures bread has opportunity to transfer that, externalize, economists will say, that cost. But the low-wage earner is trapped. She or he can't externalize that cost, and he can't mitigate his or her risk.
They have to bear the brunt.
So you're going to expect some different perception from NLC and TUC. Now, oftentimes they work together, and they've been working together in many cases because commonality of issues. We will talk about economic crisis. So, but also depend on leadership. Sometimes the state is very good at divide and control, divide and rule. So they could find, in some cases, TUC a better partner because probably the tendencies, the linkages, the other profiles might be more favorable than NSM. You talked about 1945 when we started the first crisis, arising from the crisis over price, cost of food. It's just area, we had crisis, sometimes also politics, talking about NCC, whether it was NCC that led to the crisis, it dovetailed to ethnic crisis. Today, the United Auto Workers in the US are on strike. Private sector workers, okay? For about 12,000 started it, going to 20 or so or more thousand people were striking. So the thing they strike for in the US, they strike for basic labor relations, employment hours, time of work, allowances. But here, because our democracy is not responsive to public needs and public opinion, Labour also takes an additional responsibility of being a champion for the common person. So when NLC is saying, pull back their subsidy, they're not really speaking on behalf of workers. That's what they talk about. Other things, provide syndic vehicles, they talk about. So because essentially they see themselves as championing the downtrodden, because the democratic system is not working. Now, for example, National Assembly, look at the crisis we're heading to a big crisis. Shouldn't they be the ones who will be sitting down and say, look, Mr. President, we think this is one way to meet these guys. And these guys, you can pull back here. So if those democratic institutions are working in the sense that they are responsive, sometimes the National Assembly looks as if they're not part of the country.
Now, talking about that, I was even going to come to the issue of the handling of the issue on the ground by the president. It was only sworn in May 29, less than 6 months, and has had a back and forth with the labor union more than 3 times now. I mean, what does that really portend for his ability to have a working relationship with the Nigerian workers?
Very good point to make. And look at it this way. You see, sometimes mindset, people look at labor leaders as maybe communists, some hotheads. They don't see them as, these are strategic thinkers who are also concerned about the welfare of their country. So that influences engagement. I've been to some of those meetings. You see some sense of like Adasika, okay, just buying time, okay? Good faith discussion earlier on could have saved off all this. When Labour first started to go on strike, the first thing they did was go back and obtain a court order to stop them, okay? When they did that protest, they went back and slammed committal. Labour had to threaten they would do it. So I think government should see Labour as a partner. And they should borrow from the Scandinavian model, Sweden and others. The notion is that Labour, government and business can work together for common
Partners
good.
in progress.
Partners. And what that requires is respect for each other. So if Labour says, look, we are concerned about this matter, don't just see it as a game, because government, this is the problem. Government, in third world, sees more of hard power, not soft power, of persuasion. They see more of coercion, okay? We have the courts we can go to, we have the IGs we can go to, we can even go arrest IGRO or arrest Mr. A or B. They get carried away by the fact that they are governmental. But modern society tells us that the power of government is getting weaker. Non-governmental institutions can actually paralyze the state. Even hackers, malevolent coders can cause problems. So you have to rethink the notion of governmentality back to governance, which is a process of negotiation, network, and give and take, not the force of we are state. You just can't do nothing.
Happy medium engagement.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Speaking of, who's getting weaker, government getting weaker, would you say organized labor is being weakened over the years?
I think they are.
Would you say so?
I think somehow, but they are fighting back to assert themselves. They have been weakened by the divide and rule in the system. They have been weakened by the collapse of civil society. From 2015, the civil society in Nigeria got bought into a political process. When we were young activists in the universities and civil society, the coalition is always labor, student union, and civil society. So it creates that granite coalition. And that's what, in fact, the current president himself is part of that bigger, pro-democracy movement, which is actually built around the work of Kokori. I was with Gary Fawemi when Kokori as Nupeng, they came and led the protest. And when Nupeng was banned. So the point is this, NLC is now isolated. The critical support base for public advocacy for the interest of everybody is now balkanized, and they have been kind of annexed and harnessed to the wagon of politicians. So
Very quickly,
that's
all
really
of this is happening at a time when our president is at the 78th UNGA, and he's said in the sidelines, or on the sidelines if you like, that Nigeria is ready to engage the global economic community. Nigeria is ready to do business. With all of this, is Nigeria really ready? What do we need to truly be ready?
We've been ready since 1960, but we've not done real business. Okay, but let's not forget, most of the countries there have labor issues. It depends on how you handle it. There's nothing really bad about labor and government disagreeing, but it's about the principled and the democratic and respectful manner in which everybody focuses on public good. Labor should realize that government needs space. Government should recognize that labor is a valued and legitimate partner. This is not about winner takes all. We want power, we drive the wagon. It's about the people, and labor is key stakeholder. So I will urge for a different mindset about labor relations, like the Scandinavians. It's about corporatist interests, is common good. Labor means well. Government should see labor as a trustworthy partner.
Well, government should also mean well, you mean to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
We
you
just
heard
hope-
from
we just
the
hope
Labour
so.
Minister, Simon Lalong, that Labour should be more realistic in their
And
demands.
Lalong is doing well. I like
Right.
the engagement.
So we'll
the
have to
style.
leave
Very
it
short
there.
break. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sam Amadi, for joining us on this night. Your insights are usually always very invaluable.